This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Hello, so today we're talking all about trees that you can use as houseplants. I'm going to go through a bunch of different genera and species and share my thoughts with you. And a lot of these plants I don't really see talked about that often, so hopefully some of these will be new for you as well. Like in our previous sit-down talking videos, we have my laptop here and I'm using my Milanote board. Over here, we'll get to this soon. So these are all of the different trees that I want to talk about, and we'll go into each separate category. But right now, I just want to talk about why would you want a tree in your house? So I think that trees make a huge impact in an interior. Here are 3 images that I picked out. So this is a truck furniture showroom. I think this tree is the ideal tree. I love how it goes over the sofa like that. And then there's this Dracaena here. This space goes viral all the time on Instagram and Pinterest. And I honestly think the space itself is nice, but I think this tree is what is grabbing people's attention. And then this home is also just super clean and nice, and this tree is beautiful. So all of these spaces on their own would be nice, but I feel like the trees really elevate it and add character and add a bit of life to the otherwise very neutral rooms. I think we also need to establish what is a tree. So I'm just talking aesthetically here, not necessarily botanical terminology. But these are the things that I look for in a tree in the interior. It has an elongated stem or trunk, and it has branches. So those two I think are the most important things for a plant to look like a tree in your home. And if it's woody, that also helps a lot, if the trunk is woody, and also if it's tall. So yeah, you're not really gonna see a small plant and really consider it a tree, I also want to say what plants you can't use indoors. You can't just take any tree that's outside and bring it indoors. That's just not how it works. A lot of trees, they need cycles of winter and summer and spring in order to actually live and thrive. So you can't just take a maple tree from outside indoors and then expect it to actually live. Typically, you'd want to go for a tropical plant, one that doesn't require seasons in order to grow. So if it's an evergreen plant, meaning it doesn't lose its leaves in the winter, then you can probably grow it indoors depending on the amount of light you have. I'm also not going to go too in depth with the care because each plant has different care. And if I talked all about how to take care of certain plants, this video would take forever. A few things before I talk about all of the different trees. So yes, I have a tree back here, and you may be wondering, why would I listen to this guy? His tree looks like it's dying. Well, I just got it recently, and it was previously growing outdoors in full sun, and then I brought it indoors, so it's in its acclimation phase. It also had a bunch of pests, and it dropped all of its leaves, but now they're growing back, which you can see. We used to have a ton of trees back at our old house that we unfortunately don't have anymore, but I am fairly experienced with indoor trees. I have a couple around the apartment too that are growing pretty well. So yeah, it's just unfortunate that this one is in its current phase and it looks like this, and I'm making a video about indoor trees. Also, houseplant trees are difficult to source, so at the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit about my tips and how I source these kinds of plants. Okay, now let's get into what I think is a fun part, which is all of the plants that you can grow as trees. I've been compiling this list for a while now, and I'm finally making this video. And by no means is this an extensive list of every single tree that you can grow indoors. It's just the ones that I see that are kind of common and that I think work well. Okay, so first we're talking about Ficus, and this is one of my favorite genus for indoor trees. There are a ton of different varieties and species of Ficus, so this isn't all of them, but these are the ones that I like the most. First is the Ficus elastica, also called the rubber plant. This is the one that you would find in most plant shops or big box stores. So there are 2 different ones that I like. There's the Ficus elastica, burgundy, I believe is the variety name, and then there's just a regular green one. I personally prefer the regular green one over the darker colored one. I just think that the color of the green is a very nice green. And this is one of my Ficus that I used to have. This is a Ficus burgundy, and I did this bending thing. You'll see this bend, this bent tree shape a lot in the examples that I have. It just gives the plant a cool organic shape and structure to it. This is another Ficus green elastica. And yeah, so this one is also bent. You can see it has that S shape. So I think this is a very clean, classic looking plant, nice leaf shape, nice leaf color. I'm not the biggest fan of the variegated varieties of the Ficus elastica. I like them like on their own individually. I think that they're pretty, but because of their variegation style is a little bit messy. So when you have a tree of this variegation, it just looks very busy. So that's why I don't really recommend, personally, growing the variegated ones like large as trees. Okay, this is my favorite Ficus species. It's not really as talked about in the US, I feel. I see them a lot in Asia, specifically Japan. So this is the Ficus umbellata. I used to have like 3 Ficus umbellata, but lost them in the fire. And I now have another one, which I love so much. It just has a nice shape to it. So some characteristics that I really love about this plant is that the wood turns this nice, like pale white silvery color, which I think is really beautiful. It looks, you can see it here. And it's just something that is different that I like about this plant. It branches pretty easily compared to the Ficus elastica, and it grows much faster than any other Ficus species that I've grown. Most Ficus indoors I find grow pretty slowly, but this one grows quickly and branches quickly, which is a rare trait among most of these plants that I'm going to show you today. Also, something to note is that most Ficus don't really grow all year round. I find that I get a lot of growth spurts during the spring and summertime. So if you're wondering why your Ficus isn't doing anything, that may be why, or it needs more light. I said that this wasn't going to be a care guide, but I'm just going to sprinkle some care tips and stuff throughout this video. So next is the Ficus audrey. Like the Ficus umbellata, it has a silver trunk, but this one is interesting because the leaves, they're not glossy. They are, how do I describe it? It's like slightly fuzzy, more matte. And I think this plant is really beautiful. However, I had this plant at one time in my life, like when I was starting growing plants, and it literally did not grow for me at all. And I had it for a year, and I was also giving it a lot of light. So I just haven't tried it since then, but I do think that this plant is beautiful. You can get a little bit of a closer look at the leaf shape. And oh, the veination is also nice too. I can't zoom in any more than this, but you can kind of see the veination of the leaves. And then next, let's talk about Ficus lyrata, also called the fiddle-leaf fig. This was the most popular houseplant in the 2010s. I think people are just a bit tired of this one. I don't see it talked about or grown that often. I do like it, but I think it doesn't function that well as a tree compared to other Ficus in this list. It doesn't give you that tree-like look since the leaves are so large, especially compared to the trunk most of the time. Like grown indoors, the trunk typically stays skinny and then the leaves get large. So the proportions of what you would expect a tree to look like, it doesn't add up. It's just a bit off. So yeah, that's there. I don't dislike them, but they're not my favorite Ficus. Next is the Ficus benjamina. I like this plant because, well, it's my name. That's one reason, but also because it's just like such a classic plant. I have a soft spot for the classic plants. Often it doesn't really look that nice in homes. So here are 2 examples that I have. I think on the left, this looks nice. And then on the right, it doesn't look that nice. It can easily turn into like an office or mall looking plant. But I think what's important when you have one of the Ficus is that there needs to be a trunk visible. So you can see on the left, there's the trunk visible. And then on the right, it just looks like a mass of leaves. So I think it depends on how you style it and how it's grown in. Next is the Ficus ollie. I see these a lot. It's probably my least favorite Ficus, I would say, out of all the ones that I've listed. Something about the leaf shape to me looks a bit weedy, like it looks like a weed. And also, I feel like the leaves aren't big enough, but they're also not small enough. Like they're this weird in between. So the plant just lacks shape. And you can see on the right, there's a nice trunk, but it's just so bushy on top. Not my favorite Ficus for those reasons. But I think this looks nice. I just wouldn't pick it over the other ones. Okay, Okay, now moving on from the ficus, we are moving into the Schefflera. Oh my gosh, we've only done one category, but the ficus is the largest category. So moving on to Schefflera. I am a fan of these. You can see the different variations of sizing. This one right here, I think, is just like the nicest, coolest application of like using a tree. The way that it goes over the couch, it just is integrated into the interior very well. Something that is nice about this plant is that it's very malleable. So the stem can be bent and moved and arranged how you want it. So you can see here, there's bonsai wire that's wrapped around it to move it in the direction that the grower wants it to be. And also there is a variegated version, but similar to the ficus I mentioned earlier, I don't really like the variegated version for this because it just looks a bit messy, especially once it gets large. It'll look kind of lost. I'm not like super knowledgeable about Schefflera. I think that the Schefflera actinophylla maybe got reclassified or something. And I also am not fully sure if these are the Australian umbrella tree. Australian umbrella tree is the common name because I'm just not super familiar with this plant, but it looks different than this one. So I'm thinking that this is the Australian umbrella tree. Either way, look how nice this looks. Both of these pictures, this one I'm almost 100% sure is in Japan, and this one looks like it's in Japan. So yeah, the styling for a lot of these houseplant trees, I get inspired by Japanese interiors. And then this is just like a basic, umbrella tree that maybe you would buy from a store. But yeah, look how cool these ones look. So now we're moving on to one of the most popular trees as houseplants, which is the Dracaena. So there are also a lot of different varieties of Dracaena. I did not include all of them, but these are like my favorites for the house. So this is the classic Dracaena marginata. It has green leaves and sometimes it has a red outline on it. I don't know if that's a different variety or not, but yeah, just generally when I think of Dracaena marginata, I think of green leaves and possibly a red outline. The ones that are used in interiors are usually a bit sparse, like this image, and then this image. That looks more tree-like, and people like the organic shape. I've talked about the Dracaena marginata so many times on my channel, but it is a classic and it's just so popular. So there's this one that I found on Pinterest that I really like. It just looks so sad and droopy and has so much character to it. I just love a plant that has character to it. It just looks like it had really bad lighting conditions for a long time. This picture was taken for a photo series of German office plants, and most plants in offices aren't the most well taken care of. After years of neglect, look how cool this looks. And this is typically how you would find most Dracaena at the store, either like this or taller versions of this. Like this Dracaena, and this Dracaena, and this one too. They probably started off looking something like this, but just after many years, it looks like a tree. So you can start off by getting a small plant, but just know that it's going to take you a very long time to get to that point, like probably over 10 years. Next is the Dracaena marginata tricolor, which is my favorite variety of Dracaena right now. A lot of these varieties, I can't really tell the difference because I haven't seen them compared in person. So there's like the tricolor, and then there is the colorama. So either this is the colorama and this is the tricolor, or they're both tricolor, or they're both colorama. I'm not sure, but they look a bit similar to me. Just this like Dracaena that has a bit of a pink color to it, I think is so beautiful because you don't find this kind of color very often in houseplants. This one also has just grown for a really long time, and I love when they get wonky like that. It's so cool. So I currently have one that I just got recently that I'm so excited to see grow. And then I just got another one on Facebook Marketplace for $30. Yes, $30. And I'm giving it to my parents. And then maybe in the future, once we move into a bigger place, I'll take it back and grow it. But yeah, I can't believe I got that plant for that much. So moving on, this is the Dracaena reflexa. These two images on the left are my pictures and my plant. So this was at our first apartment, and then this was at our previous house. So something that's different about this Dracaena compared to the marginata is that the leaves are a little bit more bunched together, and they're also smaller. In this variety, it has a very striking yellow outline on all of the leaves, and that's something that I like, but it only, I think, looks really good in certain applications. Like you can see here, it gets a bit lost in front of this window. This is something that I didn't really love about this placement. So because of the variegation, the leaves don't have like a strong shape to them. So it gets lost in front of any background that's not plain and that's a bit busy. So you can see this plant kind of becomes a bit of a mess, even though I still loved it, obviously. And then here with plain background, you can see more of the plant and like the shape and the structure of it. Also, this one grows more wonky, I would say, than the marginata. It's just more quick to branch and to create harsher angles. This next one is the Sparmannia africana, also known as the African hemp plant. I first discovered this plant while scrolling through Pinterest. I found it in a lot of British interiors or just like homes in the UK or in Europe. This is not a very common houseplant in the US. I used to have one at the old house, and it's one of the houseplants that I repurchased. It actually reminds me a lot of the Ficus undulata because of the leaf shape, but the leaves are very different texture-wise. It's actually soft and fuzzy, and it has all these little hairs on it. And this one grows so fast, like really, really, really fast, and it branches on its own, so you don't even have to cut it or do anything to induce branching. It'll just send out a bunch of shoots. So I think that's what's really nice about this plant. It's like a Ficus undulata on steroids. And it also can flower. This one looks like it was grown outdoors and then just brought inside. I mean, you can just see how massive these leaves are. Yeah, this is kind of what mine looks like right now. And you can see this interior looks so British to me. You can see this one grown quite tall. I love this collection of plants. But yeah, here's this Sparmannia africana. Another one here. Here again. And yeah, underrated plant. I feel like I've talked about it a lot on my channel, but I love it. And I get a lot of people asking, where can you buy this plant? Because I also wasn't really able to find it online. There is this greenhouse called Cartou's Greenhouse, and they sell them there. The website looks a little bit sketchy. I just think it's an old website, and it's like a local greenhouse or nursery, so you know they're not gonna have like the most up-to-date website. Okay, moving on. Let's go to the Ming aralia. Now we're moving a little bit faster because these other plants that I have don't have multiple species that I'm talking about. So the Ming aralia, you often see them looking more like this, very bushy, or you see this, but a taller version. I don't love how these look like this because they just don't have much of a shape to them. And honestly, this isn't one of my favorite houseplant trees. I feel like it should be because it has all of the makings of a good interior tree. Like the small leaves, they look like on their own, they look like little canopies, like little jungle canopies. But for some reason, something about them I don't really love. I think this one is cool. And I think this one is cool. These are older ones. I think when I found this image, someone was saying it was their parents' 30-year-old Ming aralia. See, like this one, it's too straight up for me. But yeah, that is an option. I feel like other people like this one, but for some reason, I don't love it. Okay, next is the Operculicarya decaryi. So this plant you will not often see as a tall tree. They just grow really slow, so if you do see it as a tall tree, it's going to be quite expensive. But if you want a tabletop tree and something that takes on a bonsai-like look easily, because they naturally look like this, there's not really pruning involved to make them look like this. And they have these very tiny, cute leaves, and yeah, just look really nice. Great for a minimal space. Like if you really like this kind of like super minimal look, I think they're great. They shine with a blank background or like a solid background because of how small the leaves are. If you don't have a solid background, it gets lost. Normally, if you buy them online or you find them at a nursery, they'll look more like this. And yeah, it takes a long time for these guys to grow, but they do look pretty cool. Also, something to note is I believe they're semi-deciduous, so throughout the year they might drop their leaves. I've never kept these indoors. I always had them outdoors because in Southern California you can grow these outside. So I can't really say too much about the care for them inside, but I do know a lot of people keep theirs indoors. So the next tree we're talking about is the Norfolk Pine. This plant is interesting. It is a tropical conifer, which is not, like, I typically don't associate conifers with being tropical. So yeah, this is also, it kind of looks like a Christmas tree. I said that once and then people like got mad at me. They were like, what kind of Christmas trees are you looking at? But don't these kind of look like Christmas trees? I mean, not exactly, but sort of, right? This picture, it's intense. Like, this looks like a jellyfish or some type of weird swamp monster ghost thing, but it is really cool. And then yeah, here are just some other images and examples of it. Out of all of these Norfolk Pine, I think this one looks the best. They take on they're very intense. I think they're an intense looking plant. So I don't know if it would work in most homes, but I wanted to include it because I think it is a cool option. And this way you could use it as your Christmas tree if you wanted to. And you don't need to go out and buy a Christmas tree or get a fake one. Okay, so next is the Everfresh tree. And I used to talk about this plant all the time a couple of years ago. I was obsessed with it because it is very difficult to find in the US. Very popular in Asia, specifically like Japan and Singapore. Yeah, these plants are everywhere. They're beautiful. They have very small leaves and they just look like a tree. I am not as obsessed with this plant anymore, and I think it's because it has such small leaves that, like some of the other plants I mentioned earlier, it really needs a plain background to shine. And also it benefits from a minimalist interior, and I feel like my interior is a bit more eclectic than what this plant needs. So yeah, you can see here, this looks really nice. This plant, or this area, I mean, yeah, this is pretty minimalist. I would say this is minimalist. And this plant looks nice. Looks good here, looks good here, looks good here. But then when you see it here, I mean, overall, like the lighting in this picture is pretty bad. So this just isn't a great picture, but you can see the background is busy and the plant just gets lost. But yeah, I do think this plant is really cool in the right applications. Not easy to find in the US, but maybe there are some sellers now that are selling it since I've been talking about it for like 2+ years. Maybe someone's figured out how to import it. Next is the money tree. And I actually really love the money tree. One, because it is a classic plant, but two, because it is synonymous with Vietnamese businesses here in California, probably throughout the US and in Vietnam too, but I only have my experience in California. In most local Vietnamese restaurants or salons or nail shops, whatever, they have a money tree. And so yeah, whenever I see this plant, I just think of like when I was younger and I'd go to Westminster, which is Little Saigon in Southern California. And yeah, it just reminds me of that. Other than the memories and the nostalgia, I also think it's a really beautiful plant. It isn't, I feel like it gets a bad rap because they're so common and typically you see them looking like this. I don't love the braided look on these plants. I don't think it looks that nice. It looks better to me as a single trunk. That way you can see the shape of the trunk, and then also the leaves aren't so bushy, so you don't lose the shape. Because when you look at the shape of the leaves, it's actually really beautiful. The little leaves coming out of the center point. So here are some of the examples that I think look really nice. I had a money tree that my dad bought for me when we first moved to our first apartment in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, like all my other plants, we lost it. That plant like gave me more of an appreciation for the money tree. Okay, now moving on. We have the Brachychiton rupestris. This is such a popular plant in Los Angeles. I feel like this is a plant you would see if you walked into Goop or another like trendy, overpriced store in LA. but I do think they look really nice. I actually have one behind me that is the Brachychiton rupestris, if you can't tell, since it is mostly just a trunk. These are beautiful, very small, fine leaves, but they're spread out enough to where it doesn't look like a bushy mess. Here are some different applications of them. This one is really cool with that larger, lower trunk. Oh, something that I think is really nice for a tree is for the bottom of the trunk to flare out. That makes it look more like a tree, I think. And something about this bottle tree is that you can lift up the plant and expose the roots. So you can see here, this is where the plant was previously buried in soil, and then they raised it up to expose this. I don't know if it has detrimental effects on the plant, but they can live with that exposed. You can see here too, they exposed this, exposed that, exposed this, and maybe like exposed right here. So yeah, that is something that's nice about this plant. You can kind of cheat having the flared out base because you can just lift it up and then like the root structure naturally flares out. I believe that the leaves look a bit different when they're grown indoors versus when they're grown outdoors in full sun. They just become daintier and a bit thinner when they're grown indoors. Like these ones here, they don't look like they were grown in very harsh conditions. At least this set of leaves, versus this one, you can see the leaves look more rigid and a bit harder and like more calloused, I guess you would say. They have more sun protection because you need to harden off plants when you introduce them to higher light conditions. Yeah, I actually like the wispier looking leaves more than the full sun leaves. Okay, next let's talk about the Bucida Buceras, also known as the shady lady tree or the black olive tree. I think that this plant is beautiful. I just don't know how well it works indoors because I've never grown one myself, and I don't see other plant people growing this plant. These are two plants that are inside, but I think that these were just staged or just installed. I don't know like how these are gonna do in the long term. Where I see these plants really shine is in places where they can get a ton of light. Like, I don't think these plants on the right are gonna live long term. I was in DC about a year ago, and I was at the portrait gallery, and in their courtyard, they had these huge trees, and they were so beautiful. I was like, what are those? And then I got closer, and then it looked just like the black olive tree leaves, and I'm pretty sure that it is. You can see how much light it's getting up top, but they looked stunning. Here are some other examples. I don't know, is this like an office space or a mall or something? And it's getting a ton of light here. Also here, it's getting a ton of light. And then here, this is definitely a mall. It's getting a ton of light and they look great. If you want this plant, I would not jump into getting a large one like this because it's probably gonna be an expensive mistake. Unless you have a ton of light, then go for it. But if you don't have like a skylight or huge windows, I don't think this is the best option for you. If you do want to try it, get a small one, grow that, see how that does. Let me know if you can actually grow it because I have not heard much about this plant from regular people. Very popular in interior styling though. But with interior styling, they just bring the plant in, take pictures, and then they don't really care if it dies or they'll take it out, because the plant is like a rental for the day. Okay, now moving on to Radermachera sinica. I have not said that out loud before. This is also called the China doll. So this one also isn't talked about that often, but I think it is pretty nice. I just added this picture really quick because I felt like this wasn't a good representation of what this plant looks like typically. So this is what it looks like when you would buy it from a nursery. It's very small, very bushy. I think they look really cool when they're tall and lanky. This one up here definitely needs more light, but sometimes that lack of light look can look pretty nice. This one has been turned into a bonsai, very pretty. And then this one is just bushy and taller, and then this one has more of a tree-like look to it. Moving on to our next and last plant, the Nandina Bamboo, also called heavenly bamboo. I don't have that many example images because it's not a commonly used houseplant. I usually see it outdoors in landscaping as a hedge, but when they're allowed to grow tall, they look pretty cool. And if you group them right, you can create this tiered look that looks really beautiful because they mostly keep their upper canopy, like usually the lower leaves die, or you can remove them yourself too. So yeah, when you create this tiered look, they almost remind me of like clouds, I suppose. You can purchase most of these plants online or at a nursery or at a big box store, but usually they'll be a lot smaller or they just won't look like cool trees. So I have a few tips about where you can get these plants. First, we're going to start with like the cheapest and then go to the most expensive. The cheapest way to find these plants is to find them secondhand, a Facebook Marketplace. Usually I find them when people are moving or they're downsizing their space. So these are usually just regular people that have had this plant for many, many years, which is the case for the Dracaena marginata tricolor or colorama that I just got. I bought it for $30. It's a 6-foot plant, has a lot of character to it. So yeah, scouring Facebook Marketplace is the best way to find one of these plants for cheap. I'm really lucky living in LA because of the density of the city. There's just so many people here, so there's a lot of good stuff on Facebook Marketplace. So if you live in a smaller city, you're gonna have a lot harder time. The next option is a nursery. You're probably not gonna find a cool structural tree at a big box store because they get their plants from greenhouses that optimize growth and have really good growing conditions. But you're not going to get that cool structural look from a plant that's grown in optimal conditions because they're kind of babied in that scenario. But if you go to a local nursery, they may source their plants from like smaller greenhouses or growers. Or what you could also do is just ask the nursery directly, like, do you have any of these plants? Do you have a way to get plants that look like this? Because when they're outsourcing plants, they could keep their eye out for you and purchase it for you. The higher tier option, which would yield you like the best, fastest results, would be to go to like a plant boutique, people that specialize in like plant design and plant interior-scaping. So in Los Angeles, there are a couple. There's Plants and Spaces, who I'm friends with. There is the Houseplant, which I'm also friends with. There are the Plant Daddies. There is the Plant Provisions LA. So yeah, those are like the plant like boutiques that I can think of off the top of my head. It is more expensive, but they are out there sourcing, finding these cool plants, and you know, to make money, they have to mark them up. So that is a surefire way to get one of those trees. But when you do buy from them, do expect a bit of a premium. I would say like over $300, over $500 to get some cool plants like that. But that is to be expected. I mean, those plants have been growing for a really long time. And what's nice about having a tree in your home is that you only need like 1 or 2, or maybe 3 if you have a big house. But the trees really command a lot of space. Like, I'd rather have 1 large tree than 10 small to medium plants. So think of the tree as an investment in your space. Think of it as like a piece of furniture. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you're in Los Angeles, there's Leaf and Spine that I got this Brachychiton rupestris from, and they are pretty good at sourcing stuff. So you can probably DM them, ask them, call them, and they're very helpful. Before we head out, I'd like to talk about the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. So I've been using Squarespace for 3 years now to run my website, and Squarespace is a great tool to build a functional and aesthetic online presence. As a content creator, it's important for people to easily be able to find my social media channels. So I have a landing page on my website that directly links people to my Instagram, my YouTube, and TikTok, other things like that. I also use my Squarespace website as an online storefront for when I occasionally sell plants or digital products. If you're an artist or a photographer, you could use Squarespace as your portfolio to share with clients. And it's really easy to make a nice looking web page that presents your work in a professional way. Like I said, you could sell digital products. So I have my desktop background that I've set up like 2 years ago, and it's just been running ever since, and I haven't had to do anything to it. The Squarespace payment system is also super easy to navigate, and you can manage all of your payments in one place. To create your own website, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/veggieplant for 10% off your first website or domain. Okay, so that is all I have for you guys today. If there are any trees that you've grown in your house that I didn't talk about in this video, let me know, and maybe I'll add it to the next list of trees that you can use as houseplants if I make the second video. Okay, thank you for watching, and goodbye.